Hello everyone, Nicholson here, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Nicholson. I'm your host, and on this show we're going to be breaking down all of the day's movie news and kind of giving a little bit of background into what it means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. So, without any further ado, let's get into today's main topics. And the first topic I want to talk about is one that I actually posted that we would be talking about yesterday. And Fox has released what they're calling the final trailer for X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, after watching this trailer, I gotta admit, this should have been the second trailer. I don't even think that they should have had that in between, because they only released a trailer a few weeks ago. And this one should have been the second and final trailer. They shouldn't have released that middle one, solely because this one does an amazing job of setting up the scope and scale of this film. It mainly focuses on Wolverine's quest to bring together the X-Men again, because during this time period where he has to get sent back to, mind you, I am going to be talking about potential spoilers about not only this film, but some of the other projects that I have lined up for this show. Now, none of these have really been confirmed. There are certain things that I've read about and that I found online. I've even talked to some other people, and these things are looking much more likely to happen. So take it with a grain of salt, but I am going to be talking about things that could potentially become spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about X-Men and want to skip on to some of the other projects, you can just skip ahead to the next part of the video. So with this, the thing that I really took away from it was Wolverine's quest to bring the X-Men back, especially being sent back to 1973. They really focus on that section of the movie, which is going to be about 80% of the film. I'm going to say about 75 to 80% of the film is going to be set during 1973. We're still going to get the cutbacks to future time, because the way that it's happening is when he gets sent, his consciousness gets sent back to his younger body in 1973 from 2023. And the way that time travel works in that, they said, is very similar to how it worked in Back to the Future. It's not, he doesn't go back and everything changes. He goes back and he actually has to, his future body has to stay in the position that it's in, and having his consciousness sent back to 1973 for the exact length of time that he's actually back there. So it will keep cutting back to the future segments of the movie while they are trying to fight off the future Sentinel attacks, but also trying to protect Wolverine's basically unconscious body while he's back trying to save the world in 1973. So we see a lot more of what he has to do in order to get these people back together. You know, he goes and he finds where Xavier is, and Beast is there, and so he starts talking to Beast, and you know that like Beast and Wolverine, especially in the comics, had a really good relationship. They were always really fun to read about, and they never really touched on that so much in the movies. But in this one, they actually talk about how, like, Wolverine looks at him and he says, "You know, you and me are going to be really good friends someday," and then he punches him right in the face. I love that. That's the character of Wolverine, just, you know, reaffirming who he is to all of his friends. I loved that. One thing that a lot of people have been complaining about in the advertisements for the movie is seeing Xavier walk. And I posted on the X-Men Days of Future Past video that I did back in February, I posted about why that is. And they did come out and state that Xavier has the ability to walk. He can still walk. He chooses to use the chair for one reason or another, and that will be explained in the movie. We still don't know exactly what the reason is, but he has the ability to walk when he needs to. So you see him in this trailer. You see when they break Magneto out of prison using Quicksilver, which, even though he still physically looks kind of stupid, that scene looked really cool. Because what they did with the Quicksilver sequence was they actually filmed it at 3,600 frames a second. Now, for those of you who don't know, normal traditional film, when you watch it, is filmed at 24 frames per second. So you're getting less than, you're getting 24 frames per second, whereas now you're getting 3,600. So the resolution and the speed that they can drop everything down to, like, you'll see him running, and then you'll also, like, you'll see the raindrops or the water droplets, and he's basically just moving right through them, because they actually filmed at that speed. Now, obviously, they would have gone in and touched that up with special effects, but the fact that they based that sequence in that 3,600 frame rate is really going to make the more authentic feel for that sequence. So I'm actually getting really excited about that sequence. I know it's just going to be a little small one, but I am interested to see how they tie in the fact that Wolverine knows him, because Wolverine says, he goes, "I know a guy. He's going to be a young man right now." And they've never introduced Quicksilver in the movies before. One other report as well, again, minor spoilers, one other report came out and stated that they, even though I don't believe they're going to directly address the fact that Quicksilver is the son of Magneto, I think that that's hinted at, or at least a nod to that is placed. Again, this is all just with a grain of salt. These are all just speculations, but there is a likelihood that they will at least address the fact that Quicksilver is Magneto's son, in a way to differentiate the characters between this movie and Avengers 2 Age of Ultron, which will be coming out next year, which also has Quicksilver. So it'll be really interesting to see how they do that. But, I mean, to me, one of the standout sequences, there were two of them that stood out to me in this trailer. Well, there were a bunch, but two of them mainly stood out to me. The first one was the fight sequence that Blink and Colossus are using their powers together, and they look to be, Blink basically creates a portal. Blink's powers are to be able to create portals that you can just jump through, and like I could be here and then I could jump through it and be, 40 miles away if I wanted to. Like, it would just, that's her power. And so she opens up a portal, and Colossus runs through it, jumps through. The other side of the portal is actually well above the area that they're fighting in, and he jumps through and he turns to his metal form and he just starts diving down. And as he's diving down to the ground, another portal opens up, and he looks like he's going to go through and actually fly into one of the Sentinels, which I thought, that's just cool. We haven't really seen the X-Men really using their powers together. We've seen them all together and individually using their powers, but never really have we seen them using them together. So this is going to be a really intriguing action sequence, or at least a few, because the same with the clip that was released a couple of days ago. You really got to see how they all work together, especially with Iceman, like Blink opening up the portal, Iceman using his his ice railway, or whatever it's called. I can't exactly remember what it's called, but and blasting the one Sentinel who was just fried by Sunspot. Like, everything just looks really cool. They're using everything together, and we've been waiting now, I believe, 7 films to see this. So there's a lot going for this movie, and this just ups the scale. But the second sequence was Magneto lifting up a stadium. I think it was a football stadium, and he lifts up the entire stadium and drops it in the middle of a city. Now, it looks as though he does this to section off a fight so that they can have a fight with the Sentinels and try to destroy the Sentinels, as opposed to having like all law enforcement stuff like that come in and potentially getting hurt. Because at the end of the day, the mutants don't want to harm the humans. The mutants want to save the humans, but they want to make sure that they themselves are going to be protected. They're not going to put themselves in a situation where they will die for people who are also trying to attack them. They're not necessarily like that, especially at this time, because they're going back to before the X-Men really were established and really where they're coming in on their own. So I really like that sequence. I'm very excited. I have a feeling, by the way, that is going to be the climax of the movie. I think that's going to be the major end action sequence of the movie, when the past Sentinels are going to rise up essentially and start killing everybody, and then the mutants are going to have to come in and really save the day. So I'm glad that they've hidden a lot of that stuff from the trailers, at least until now, really giving people a growing sense of what to expect with this film. But one thing that I find is kind of odd about the advertising, and maybe they're doing this on purpose, but they're really hiding Bolivar Trask, who is played by Peter Dinklage, and I don't know why. It could be that he's mostly in quote-unquote political scenes, like boardroom sequences and stuff like that. He's a very intellectual individual, so I don't see him being a physical threat, especially considering the fact that they got Peter Dinklage to play. No shots against Peter Dinklage. I love the guy as an actor. He's amazing, especially in Game of Thrones. But the fact that they would get a little person to play one of the most renowned villains in the X-Men lore, to me, signs the fact that he's going more for the intellectual aspect as opposed to the physical demanding aspect. Because many people might not remember, but in X-Men: The Last Stand, which I don't know if they're actually going to be doing this entirely, but Bryan Singer's come out and said we're going to fix some continuity issues, and I'm pretty sure he was directly referencing X-Men: The Last Stand. But Bolivar Trask was already portrayed on screen by Bill... I want to say Bill Duke, but it's not Bill Duke. Or it might even be Bill Duke. It was he was in Predator and Commando. He's been in several movies, and he actually portrayed him in a very small role in X-Men: The Last Stand. So now they've not only just recast him, they've changed the race and they've changed the stature of the character entirely. So they're completely separating that movie, and for the most part at least. You know, Professor Xavier's back, even though in the after credit sequence of X-Men: The Last Stand, Xavier came back in another body, but I mean, it was another body, it wasn't a clone of his. So I hope they're going to explain that. But one of the biggest grins that I got, because I heard a rumor about this a couple of weeks ago, and this almost puts a little bit more credence to that, is the relationship that's growing between Beast and Wolverine, which I thought was really funny. But there's the last part says, in the future, do I make it? And Wolverine's looking ahead and he goes, no. And there's a rumor going around that Kelsey Grammer actually showed up and filmed a sequence in the future section of the film. To play the future version of Beast, because he played Beast in X-Men: The Last Stand. So I think that would be a really cool tie-in, and maybe it's a segment where they show that you know, Beast went out in the blaze of glory, and then they go back, and when they correct or if they correct the Sentinel attack in 1973, then we'll get things like Beast or Storm or all these characters who potentially are going to die to come back. The one that people are hoping for, and I don't think that this is a possibility, but they may do it either in this one or in X-Men Apocalypse, is Cyclops. Because a lot of people really hated the way that they portrayed Cyclops. Cyclops was the leader of the X-Men in the comics and even in the cartoons. And they really they sidelined him. I mean, in the first one he was alright, but it was mostly Wolverine's movie. In the second one, he really got sidelined because he was brainwashed for part of the movie, so he was gone for a lot of it. And then the actor James Marsden went with Bryan Singer to go and shoot Superman Returns. So instead of just recasting him, Fox was very spiteful around that time because Bryan Singer left as opposed to staying to do X-Men 3. Then he took James Marsden with him, and I think another actor, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically Fox kind of got like a kid in a sandbox where a bigger kid came by and took his toy, because they were like, well, we're going to show them, we're going to fast track our movie, we're going to release it before his Superman movie, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to take the character that he took away and we're going to kill him off. And so that's what they did. Instead of moving the sequences that they could have used for Cyclops near the end of production, or even at the beginning to adjust for his schedule with Superman, they decided to just put him into 1 or 2 sequences and then kill him off. And so I mean, a lot of people, I'm going to go do something right now that a lot of people are probably going to get mad at me about. And I'm going to slightly defend Brett Ratner for X-Men: The Last Stand. As much as I hated The Last Stand, it wasn't entirely his fault. Many people might not know this, but Matthew Vaughn, the director of X-Men First Class, was originally signed on to direct X-Men 3. And about, I think it was either a few weeks or a month before filming was supposed to start, he dropped out. He cited that, you know, he didn't want to be away from his family, you know, his personal reasons, this, that, and the other thing. Just a whole bunch of hoopla came out about it. He dropped off. Brett Ratner, in the past, has been able to come on to other projects and really deliver something as good as possible, really without it being his vision. And so that's what he had to do when he came into X-Men: The Last Stand. You know, several characters had already been cast. Kelsey Grammer had already been cast as Beast. Who else was cast? There were a few other people who had been cast in the movie. Then he came in and he cast Ben Foster as Angel. Who else? He cast a couple of actors, a couple of the roles, but some of the roles had already been pre-cast. The sets had already started to be designed, so he didn't have a hand in those. He had a little bit of an ability to adjust the way that they were going to do the shots, because they would have had to order new equipment, this, that, and the other thing. So it's not one. I mean, don't get me wrong. He is responsible for the total outcome of the movie. Don't get me wrong, but it's not 100% his fault. It was kind of in shambles when he was handed it. So I mean, they are going to try to fix some of the problems that happened with X-Men 3. And X-Men 3's problems were not solely with Brett Ratner. They were with the script by Zach Penn, and Simon Kinberg, I believe, even had a hand in that, which is very interesting to me, because Simon Kinberg is responsible for X-Men: The Last Stand. He was responsible for XXX State of the Union. but he's also now Fox's spearhead of their entire superhero division. He's just going to be responsible now. He's producing Fantastic Four. He's overseeing all the X-Men movies. He's even co-writing Apocalypse, or at least has his hand in Apocalypse. I think he worked on Days of Future Past as well. So he's really come around on his own. And a lot of people will say that, well, he wrote those movies, he must be terrible. Well, Akiva Goldsman is an Academy Award-winning writer. He wrote The Beautiful Mind, and he's teamed up with Ron Howard on several occasions. He also wrote Batman and Robin. Everyone can have a bad day at the office. So, I mean, I will always cite people's past work as a reason as to why you should be excited about a project or not, but it will never be 100% of the reason why you should be excited or why you shouldn't be excited. So the fact that this movie is looking bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're stating that this doesn't even hold a candle to what is going to happen in Apocalypse, we're in a really good position now. Fox really understands what they're trying to do and what they're going to be doing with this film. So I'm really excited about this movie. I cannot have any more anticipation about it. We got just over a month before it releases. I believe it's May 26th that it comes out. So when it comes out, I'll definitely be doing a review of the movie. I'll probably be going to see it 2 or 3 times before I do the review, because this movie just looks incredible. Very excited about it, and I cannot be more happy that X-Men is back in the hands of the original director, Bryan Singer, who brought us so far the 2 best X-Men movies that have been released. So the next story today is actually about Fast 7. A new report came out about Fast and Furious 7 that Cody and Caleb Walker, the brothers of Paul Walker, are actually going to be coming in, and they've joined the production of the movie, most likely to stand in as body doubles in wide shots and distance shots, just to get kind of the build. And then again, they are going to be using CGI and face replacement with voiceover to do any sort of close-up shots. Now, again, with all these reports coming out, they haven't stated how much footage they still need to get of Paul Walker's character, of Brian O'Connor. So I don't know. I hope that they're not trying to flesh out the remaining role that he originally had in the movie using these characters, because it's not going to work. I mean, we saw that in Tron Legacy. The technology is just not there to make it believable. I'm hoping, especially with the fact that his family is now involved with it, like his daughter has given her blessing, and now his brothers are going to be involved in the production to honor his final role. And so this to me shows that they are going to be treating the character with respect. I have a feeling that they are going to just be filming 2 or 3 sequences just to tie up his role and tie up his character to retire him, because they did say that he's going to retire him. So I think that that's what they might be doing, rejigging the script a little bit. They are shooting again. We just don't know when they're going to be getting to Paul Walker sequences, but the movie still has a year to come. It doesn't release until April 10th of 2015, so we still have some time before this movie comes out, but it is going to be interesting how they handle the marketing of this movie, because if people remember correctly with The Dark Knight, the first 2 trailers that came out, the first trailer came out like a year before the movie came out. It was just voiceover. And it had the Joker's voice and stuff like that. And at that point, we didn't even know that Two-Face was in the movie. We knew that Harvey Dent was in the movie, but we didn't know if they were going to save Two-Face for the 3rd film. And then the first trailer came out, and along with the opening sequence to the movie during, I believe it was I Am Legend, when that came out back in 2007. They had the opening sequence, the bank sequence in IMAX that you saw, and then they also released the first trailer, which heavily featured the Joker. Now, it didn't really feature him in terms of showing his face, but it was all about who the character is, what's going on with that character in that world. And then a month later, or a month and a half later, Heath Ledger unfortunately died. So a lot of the promotional material and the advertising for the movie switched to Two-Face. They started to acknowledge that Two-Face was in the movie. They really started to showcase him in the trailers. They still focused on the Joker, but they alleviated more towards Two-Face. And I'm wondering if that's what they're going to do with this. If they're going to not necessarily shy away from showing Paul Walker, but maybe they're going to focus more on Vin Diesel's character, or even Jason Statham's character. We still don't know exactly what's going to be going on. We don't even know what the plot of the movie is, outside of Jason Statham's character is out for revenge against Dom and his team. That's it. That's all we know. So I'm hoping that we get at least a plot synopsis about this. I mean, it doesn't come out until April. We're probably not going to see any advertising until at least the fall. They may put out like a little stinger, but with the new NATO agreement, and NATO, I'm not talking about NATO as in the defense place, I'm talking about the North American Theater Owners, or National Association of Theater Owners, sorry, and their new stipulations that no movie trailers can be longer than, now again these are more guidelines, but no movie trailers can be any longer than 2 minutes in length. You cannot advertise a movie more than 5 months before its release. Now each studio is given 2 exceptions to this every year, so they can choose 2 projects to have trailers out more than 5 months in advance, and can be longer than 2 minutes. And I mean, perfect example would be Disney using that for Avengers and Star Wars. So I mean, that's just Disney, and then we got you know, every studio is going to have a film that they're going to want to do that with. I have a feeling Universal is really going to try to use that to advertise with Fast and Furious. We know that Sony's done that with Spider-Man. They put out like 18 trailers, 14 clips. If you were to go and spend a couple of hours, you could probably watch the movie online somewhere. You just piece together all the little clips that they put out. And with the exception of maybe a scene or two, you probably got the whole movie there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this movie, to see exactly, you know, what direction they take it in. We know that it's going to be more of a revenge thriller than anything else, but yeah, we're just not going to know too much more until they actually start coming out with stuff. And I'm assuming that's not going to happen until well after filming's done. So we're probably going to have to wait till the end of the summer, fall, to really start hearing some concrete stuff about this film. But when we get more information about it, I will definitely update on the show. And the last major piece of movie news today, this is filed under the rumor category 100%. We do know that Fox is looking to go ahead with another Die Hard movie. As bad as the last one was, for some reason it still made money, most likely because it was Die Hard. And so we know that they're moving ahead with Die Hard 6. Bruce Willis is interested to come back, which surprises me because Bruce Willis came out about 6 months ago in an interview and said that he's bored of doing action films. He doesn't like them anymore. He doesn't find anything exhilarating about them, and you can see that on screen with him. When you watch a movie like Red, you can see him having fun. You can see him, you know, at least smiling a little bit and kind of chuckling, you know, being a little bit more gung-ho about being on a production. But then you watch him in other action films, he just looks bored. And so him returning to Die Hard, unless he just loves this character, which I can't see because he really only plays Bruce Willis, I don't know what it is about the 6th one, or at least the idea that they have, but the rumor going around is that Fox is trying to get Samuel L. Jackson to come back as Zeus. If they were to do that, it would pique everyone else's interest in the movie even more. Now, again, at the end of the day, the final product is what's going to determine whether or not it's a good movie. That's the case with all film. But with something like Die Hard, I think people have been burned a little bit too much with this franchise. I mean, number 4, I really enjoyed number 4. The thing, though, is that it didn't feel like a Die Hard movie. It felt like a really cool action film with Bruce Willis in the lead, but it didn't feel like a John McClane action film. It felt more like a superhero film. And so number 5 was just ludicrous. I mean, you got him holding on to the back of a truck, which is hanging out of the ass end of a helicopter, and then he goes flying off of it through pane glass windows into radioactive water, and he comes out and he's barely got a scratch on him, and he's also not dying from radiation. So, I mean, like, the movie was just ludicrous. And as long as I don't get the same writer, I believe it was Skip Woods who wrote it, which, I mean, they got to stop giving Skip Woods movie credits, because the guy cannot write to save his life. Now, he wrote Swordfish, which was a terrible movie. He wrote the first Hitman, which it was well acted and the directing was really good. But the studio got its hands on it and really cut it up. But I mean, still, the initial script was not very good. It wasn't very strong. And he also wrote Die Hard 5. So now with Die Hard 6 and Sam Jackson returning as Zeus, it's all going to depend on what the story is, because we don't even know what happened to the Zeus character. You know, they were you know, standing there. He was telling John McClane to go call his wife. And they were just laughing together. And then in the 4th one, we don't even no mention of him. So we don't even know what happened to the character. Maybe he went to jail, and maybe this one is about him having to bust him out of jail or something like that. I really don't. This is all 100% speculation. This is not based on anything I've read. So I really don't know what the storyline they could come up with for it. But to me, it's interesting because Fox is now looking at what's worked in the past. If they were to bring back Sam Jackson with Bruce Willis as those characters, set it back in New York, and bring McTiernan back to direct. Because for those of you who don't know, John McTiernan, the director of the original Die Hard and Die Hard 3, he also directed movies like The Hunt for Red October and Predator, and the list goes on and on and on. But for the past several years, he's been in jail for, I believe it was wiretapping or blackmail or something of that sort. So he's been in jail for a while, but he's either been released recently or about to be released. And so if he was to come back and Fox was to coerce him into doing another Die Hard film, as long as he hasn't lost his touch, which I don't hope he hasn't, because he's a very good director. But if they got him to return to direct, Sam Jackson to come back as Zeus, with Bruce Willis as John McClane, set in New York, you could really have a pretty great Die Hard movie just right there, as long as it's written properly. Don't go extravagant. I mean, it went from, the first movie was a building. The second movie was an airport, so it was a building, but it was a larger complex. The third movie was a city. The fourth movie was the entire East Coast. The fifth movie was Russia. I mean, if they keep going the trajectory that they're going to go, it's going to be John McClane in space saving us from aliens, because the world is now at stake. And I hope they don't do that. They got to go back to more smaller scale. They got to put him more. They got to confine John McClane. They can't give him unlimited resources and just expect him. Like I loved number 4. I loved Live Free or Die Hard just because it was so energetic. It was very different from the other Die Hard movies because it had to be more modern. They had to change it up a little bit. The action I felt was much more improved, even though it was a little bit more CGI, a little bit more bombastic, but I still really enjoyed it, and to me it falls well above Die Hard 2. And I'd have to flip a coin as to whether or not Die Hard with a Vengeance or Die Hard the original is the better film, but Live Free or Die Hard would be right underneath whichever one is second, because all three of those are very good. And then you got Die Hard 2, which is still entertaining, and then Die Hard 5 is way down here. So there's no official confirmation that this is even happening. Again, this is all rumor. If it does end up happening, if they go through with stuff like that, it'll be a very interesting film. But if not, I mean, this will probably kill the Die Hard franchise, which I hope doesn't happen, because that means that in 5 years we're going to get a reboot, because that's the way that all the companies are doing it now. Well, now we've reached that point of the show called Rapid Fire. So for Rapid Fire, we've got a couple of news topics to talk about. We're just going to blow through them real quick because they're just maybe little updates about other projects that I've already talked about with just a little update, or there's just something that there's just not a lot of information about, but I just wanted to let you guys know. So the first topic of Rapid Fire is these reports came out a couple of weeks ago, but Channing Tatum actually just kind of confirmed them. Channing Tatum has actually had meetings with Fox about portraying the character of Gambit in either a future X-Men movie or a standalone Gambit film. Now, I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, Channing Tatum has really turned himself around in terms of how a lot of people view him as an actor. When he first started out, he was in Step Up. He was a model turned actor. A lot of people don't remember, but he was also in Coach Carter with Samuel L. Jackson, which I thought was he played a really kind of funny character in that movie. He kind of played an idiot, but I thought he did it with earnestness, like he had a little bit of earnestness to him. But with him actually coming on and playing the role of Gambit, he might have the chops to actually do it. And you got to remember, like, Gambit is a type of character where he's very sarcastic. He's a huge ladies' man. He's got that Cajun accent because he's from New Orleans. He's a badass. We know that Channing Tatum can portray a badass. I think the one thing that's going to make or break this is going to be Jupiter Ascending, which I, for one, am really excited about Jupiter Ascending, only because it looks to be hard sci-fi, and it's been a long time since we've gotten a movie like that. A lot of movies will play it safe, and they will introduce sci-fi, science fiction tropes into an already existing world. This goes above and beyond. Like, she's the heir to the Queen of the Universe, and he plays a half albino, half werewolf hunter, who's got rockets on his boots. He's got like a shield that can be an energy shield that can be emitted out of his arm. He's got those little spiky ears. Like, it looks cool. It's from the guys who did The Matrix, so we know that they can do visually striking movies that have a lot of precedence underneath them. But my only problem is that it might have been, they haven't really had a good film with the exception of Cloud Atlas. They haven't really had a good film since the original Matrix. And I mean, a lot of people say, well, they did V for Vendetta. No, they didn't. They wrote V for Vendetta. It was not directed by them. It was directed by John McTeague, John McTeague. And so if that movie is a hit, which judging by the trailers, I know I'm really excited about it, but it doesn't scream mega blockbuster. It screams mega bomb. Because it looks too fantastical for the major movie-going audience, which is really upsetting, because these are the types of movies, these really creative, out there movies, the movies where people take risks and they come up with an idea that has never really been done before and is so extravagant, and yet no one just wants to go and see it because they have to actually think. And that's what I really hate about a lot of the way that Hollywood works, a lot of the executives in Hollywood, because they'll say, well, the majority of people are not going to understand this. They're predetermining that a lot of people are not going to understand this, so they're just not going to go through with it. And when they do, they unfortunately pick the wrong projects, and people just don't go and see them. So then they say, well, I mean, we tried that already, and no one went and saw it. And it goes, yeah, it has nothing to do with what you based the movie on. It's the fact that the movie that you made was a piece of garbage, and no one wanted to see it because it looked just terrible. It had nothing to do with what it was about. It just didn't look very good. This movie, on the other hand, looks really good. And I hope that they can do something. I hope that they can do something with the advertisements to really make it so that people are going to be really excited about it. And speaking of Channing Tatum, the studio has actually come out. Universal actually just came out and announced, I believe it was Universal. It was either Universal or Warner Brothers, whichever studio owns the project. But the sequel to Magic Mike, titled Magic Mike Extra Extra Large, or just XXL, they've set a release date of July 3rd, 2015 for the movie, and they are expecting that most of the cast members are going to be returning. Now, we know that Steven Soderbergh is not coming back to direct it. I believe he's coming back to produce it, but he's not going to be directing it. There's a new guy that they got coming in to direct it, and for a long time they thought that Channing Tatum was actually going to come in and direct it. He was going to make it his directorial debut with a co-director, but sadly that never ended up happening. But I believe it was the assistant director, or the second unit director of the original Magic Mike is coming in to direct this. So there's at least some continuity with that. The guy who was involved in the production of the original is going to be helming the sequel. So, I mean, for those of you who are excited about Magic Mike 2 or Magic Mike XXL, it will be released July 3rd, 2015. And the last bit of news, I actually had this as a user question a couple of weeks ago, but now we have some confirmation on this. The Friday the 13th reboot now has a director, and David Bruckner, who directed the Amateur Night segment of VHS, which was a horror anthology movie that came out. If you guys are into horror and you haven't seen VHS, definitely go out and check it out. It is amazing. It's several vignettes from several directors, like little short films almost, kind of put together into a big film, and it's incredible. Like the talent that are behind some of these movies. Like, I mean, you look at some of these anthology films, and you get movies like Movie 43, which was just on a bomb. Oh, it was abysmal. It was just abomination, terrible, garbage, horrible. But then you look at something like, when they do it with horror, it works. You know, you look at the ABCs of Death, or you look at VHS. You know, all of these anthology series do it really well because they're constrained. Each director is only given a short period of time to tell their story. They don't have to try to fill it with things just to make the time a certain length. So with Dave Bruckner now coming on to direct it, he really has a concisive director feel for his project. You know, he's able to do these short films. He comes from music videos, and now he's done Amateur Night, so he really is able to make a concisive narrative in a short period of time. So taking on something like Friday the 13th, which it will be the 13th Friday the 13th movie, releasing on Friday, March 13th, 2015. It's got a lot going for it. And I think they're really going to play that up in the marketing. So if this actually ends up going through and he signs on the dotted line, because they said that we want you, and now he just needs to sign on. If that happens, we're probably going to see filming's going to start real soon. I would say probably by midsummer, and they're going to have it ready for March of next year to bring out the 13th installment of Friday the 13th on Friday the 13th. I think is cool. So, but that'll about do it for Coming Soon Movie News with Nicholson. Thank you so much for watching. You guys have been a great audience. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Nicholson, Niklsun. You can also click the subscribe button right down here at the bottom of the screen to make sure that you get updates on all of your new and upcoming movie news. So without any further ado, this has been Nicholson. You guys have been great, and also don't forget to, if you have any comments or questions about any upcoming films, or if you just have anything in general that you just want to discuss about any movie projects or film in general, don't hesitate to either put a comment in the comment section. You can message me on Twitter at Nicholson, NIKLSUN, or you can email me at movienewswithnicholson@gmail.com. So without any further ado, this has been Nicholson. You guys have been great. Thank you so much, and you enjoy your day. Take care.